Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. My name's Jamie. I'm the Regional Tutor Manager for Premier Training in the North, and I'm going to be taking you through this webinar this afternoon to help you complete your business and sales LAPs. So all I suggest you have in front of you is your business and sales manual and also your LAP. If you haven't started your LAP yet, then just a blank copy is absolutely fine. If you have started, then if you have that copy in front of you, you can refer to that as I'm talking as well. Okay, so the aim of this webinar, like I've already said, is to give you some additional guidance on how to complete your business and sales LAP. More specifically, I'm going to clarify first of all when and how to submit your LAP, and then I'm going to give you some guidance on how to complete the assignment and how to complete the worksheet. After that, you will have the opportunity to ask any questions relating to both of them as well. All right then, so just a little bit of admin to get us started. In terms of your LAP, it can be downloaded from your online learning platform. It's available via your course tutor, and it's also available via the handout section of this webinar. So if you have a look in the control panel on the right hand side, you should see the handout tab, and there are two documents there, the LAP and also the guide that I will be referring to and using throughout this webinar. So if you haven't already downloaded them, you can download them from there. In terms of completing the LAP, if you are completing the course full-time, it should be submitted during week 5. The majority of you at the moment, I believe, are week 4 of your diploma, so next week will be your hand-in date. If you're completing the course part-time, it should be before weekend 9 that the work is submitted. In terms of saving the work, please make sure you save it as a Word document. And when you do save it, if you could use the format indicated on the screen, that would help us identify the work when it's being sent out to your assessor. So if you save as your name, the venue where you're completing the course, business and sales LAP, and the date that you're submitting, that would be really helpful. When the work's complete, you need to email it to assessment@premierglobal.co.uk. If you could also copy in your primary course tutor, that'll help them to track who has completed the work. When you do send the email, if you could use the same information in the subject header again, that would be helpful. So your name, venue, business and sales LAP, and date. So the final bit of admin before we start looking at the questions in the assignment. You will all have this assessment plan at the start of the LAP. Can you please make sure that at the top where it says centre name and venue, you do complete these with the venue where you are completing the course. Hand-in or planned assessment date, you can ask your tutor for that information if they haven't given it to you already. If you are in week 4 of your course at the moment, your hand-in date will be the 13th of April. The final section where it asks for learner name, signature and date does need to be completed, but you can just type your initials in the signature box. It doesn't matter what date you include on there, today's date or the date you submit is absolutely fine, but again this helps us to identify that the work is yours. Before we move on to have a look at the various questions in the assignment, can you all just let me know if you have any questions so far, any questions about the hand-in date or how to complete and submit the LAP. If you've got no questions, maybe just pop me a comment in the question box just to say, no, all good. If you do have any questions, obviously I'll answer those and then we'll move on. So just a question there about the LAP. No, the LAPs are all completed and submitted electronically, so you don't need to print the LAP. The work is sent electronically to the assessments team and it is marked to you and sent back to you electronically as well. So you don't need to print the LAP unless, of course, you want to, if it helps you to fill it in. Yes, the LAP I'm referring to, it's the combined business and sales LAP. So there is just one LAP for you to complete. If you're not sure if you do have the right document, again, please do download it from the handout section at the side of the webinar, but it is also available on your online learning platform. Excellent. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to the various questions in the assignment. We will spend a little bit longer on some questions than others, but I will run through all of them. Again, I will give you the opportunity to ask questions at various points if there is anything that you do want to run by me. So if we start with question 1, the business proposal. This is a nice question to get you started. It's basically a summary of your business idea and the services that your business will offer. You may find it's easy to complete this question actually at the end of the assignment once you've done your market research. Certainly the second question, give a brief overview of the product or service that your business will offer, will require you to have a good understanding of your business and products. So it's absolutely fine to come back and complete this at the end if you are finding it tricky to fill in some of these boxes now. Other than that, please review the guide and look at the slide in front of you to give you some ideas about what to put in each of those boxes. Moving on to question 2, the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. If at this point you haven't had a chance to look through your manual yet, I suggest you have a look through and read the information on SWOT analysis, as that will help you with these questions. The guide and the slide in front of you gives you examples of what to include under each of these headings. I suggest you put 2 key points for each: strength, weakness, opportunity and threat, and then go on to explain how you could capitalise on the strength or opportunity and how you could overcome the weakness or threat. So as an example for strength, you should identify your personal strengths to the business. For example, you could be an expert in weight management or weight loss, and you could be the only provider of small group training in your area. In terms of an action plan, you need to think about how you could capitalise on these strengths. So could you look to set up a specialist session or group to appeal to these target markets? This question carries 8 marks. You do need to score 1 mark per box in order to achieve the minimum marks for this question. Following on from the SWOT analysis, question 3 is your market research. This is quite a long question. It covers lots of key areas, so we will run through each of these questions quickly. At the end of question 3, I will give you the chance to ask any questions that you might have up until this point. This market research is designed to give you a good idea about whether your business is viable and for you to understand the customers and the products that you wish to deliver. The first question asks you to explain what is meant by segmenting customers and to give 2 examples of how you will use this approach to target market your customers or prospects. The question does carry 4 marks. I suggest you first of all start by giving 2 good sentences about what segmenting customers is. Again, if you are unsure, please do refer to your manual. Segmenting is basically breaking your customers down into smaller markets or demographics. When you've done this, you should then give 2 examples of how you will target your market based on this segmenting approach. There is an example given in front of you and on the guide as well. After you've looked at segmenting, you need to move on to carry out some market research. So the second question on this page requires you to carry out primary and secondary market research. Secondary market research is easier to carry out as you can review information on the internet. There are some examples of sources of reliable information in front of you. At this point, you may not have had time to carry out primary research. If that's the case, then please state here what you would do if you were to carry out primary research. I would definitely recommend that you do this prior to starting your business, as it will give you valuable information and advice. This question carries 2 marks. You do need 1 mark as a minimum in order to meet the requirements for this question. Moving on from your primary and secondary market research, you need to use that information to answer the following 2 questions. For the first question, you need to use the results of your market research to summarise the market size, demographic profile and wants and needs of your market. It's important that you do cover all 3 aspects of that question. You may want to put 3 individual headings of market size, demographics, wants and needs. My advice would then be to give 2 solid points under each of those headings. 5 marks are needed for this, or are available for this question. 4 marks are needed to meet the minimum required. There are some examples there in front of you. So if we look at wants and needs, you will need to explain what the wants and needs of the market are. This shouldn't just be what you think, but what you found out from the research that you've delivered. After that, you might want to offer your conclusions as to why you believe that market is a good choice for you. The second half of this question requires you to look at the Mars viability test. Again, if you haven't had a chance to read through the Mars viability test yet, I suggest you have a look at that in your manual before completing this question. You need to use your information to establish whether your business is viable. The Mars viability test helps you to look at this. If your business isn't viable, then you would need to go back to the beginning and start again with a new business idea. But by this point, hopefully you have all found that your business is a viable one. So for this question, you do need to make sure you cover each of the 4 points: measurable, accessible, responsive, and size. Again, please do refer to the manual if you do have any questions that aren't answered on this guide. The next part of this market research question needs you, based on your market research, to describe which markets you intend to target and why. Again, this should be relating to the market's wants and needs, not simply your wants and needs as the PT. You may want to break this down into different target markets and consider short, medium and long-term options. You should have at least 2 different target markets or 2 segments for your business. An example here given for short term is stay-at-home mothers and those who work from home for one-to-one PT. You would then need to go on to explain why you have chosen that, presumably because your market research shows there are a lack of people in your area charging those services, and your primary research has indicated people would be willing to pay and need that service. 4 marks for this question, 3 are required to meet the minimum. The last part of question 3 requires you to pull this information together to clarify 2 of your products or services, the price that you will charge for them, the place where you will provide them, and a justification. Only 2 services are required here. If you do want to have more in the business, that's absolutely fine, but only 2 are required. So an example here could be small group sessions in the local park. The price, based on your research, you may decide to charge £5 per hour, and the place would be the park closest to you or the park of your choice. You then need to justify why that is based on the research that you have carried out. There are 6 marks available for this question. So that's the end of question 3. It is a long question and it does involve a lot of market research, but it's all really important to help you have a successful business. If any of you have any questions relating to question 1, 2 or 3 so far, please could you type them in the question box now and I will go through and answer them. If you've got no questions, that's absolutely fine. Just again, pop me a little comment saying that you are fine and we're ready to move on to the next section. Excellent, so it looks like a few of you are fine. I'm just going to give you another minute in case any of you are still typing questions. We will be moving on to look at business startup costs. So if you have completed this question already, you may want to have your LAP in front of you. Okay, I don't think I've got any more questions coming through for now. If you do have any questions, either save them for the end or type them now and I will try and come back and answer them when we get to the end of the next section. Okay, so business startup costs. For this question, you need to make a list of all the costs that you would need to spend to get the business ready to trade. These are all expenses prior to day 1 of you starting your business. So for example, if you decide to start trading on the 1st of May, this will cover everything up until the end of April. Some examples are on the slide in front of you. These are contained within the guide that you should already have access to as well. At the top, first of all, it runs through items to be purchased. So these are things that haven't been bought yet, but you will buy prior to day one of starting trading. Examples here given are insurance, kettlebells, business cards, and uniform. Please make sure the costings are realistic, so you may need to do some research to check those out. The person here as well has already made 2 purchases. They have already purchased a website and some dumbbells, which have come in at £449. So what you do need to do is add those together to give you a total of pre-trading expenditure. So this person has a pre or startup cost expenditure of £894. That figure is important because you do need to carry that forward onto your cash flow forecast later on in this assignment. So make a note of your figure and make sure that goes onto your plan later. Moving on from your startup costs, the next 2 questions look at promotion. The first one is a promotional plan or a marketing planner. So for your business, you do need to have some promotion every month for a full calendar year. So we must see every month on this plan. Now, all of the items that you decide to do in terms of marketing should have realistic costs attached to them. You may need to do some research to check out these costs. As an example, to advertise in a local newspaper, a quarter-page advert for one edition is likely to cost in the region of £400. So it's worth looking at costings and what's realistic and will be the best value to money for you as the personal trainer or business owner. So there are some examples here. February, flyers and banners to advertise group sessions and PT coming in at £100. March, social media pay-per-click general business advertising at £50. When you do this question, it's really important to remember the cost is the cost to you as the business owner, not the cost to the customer. So let's say you have a special offer on sessions, a 12-week Get Fit for Summer package that costs £300. That's the cost to the customer, not the cost of you advertising it. So you need to think about how you will promote that package. Are you going to do that through banners, posters, online advertising? And it's that cost that needs to go on this promotional plan. Make sure these costings are realistic, and again, these costs do need to be carried forwards to your cash flow forecast later. So make a note of this question and remember to factor those costs in. The second part of this promotional question, question 6, requires you to produce a promotional flyer. So this flyer can be done on any package on your computer. If you do want to do this on an online package such as Vistaprint or another flyer design site and then use that or copy it across, that's absolutely fine. But a Word document or publish a document is absolutely fine as well. You do need to make sure that you use all or include all of the 6 bullet points that are in front of you. So you need to include images and photos that are appropriate to your business. There needs to be a headline which grabs attention and is focused on your target market. You need to make sure that you advertise product or service details which are also relevant to your target market. The flyer should contain some incentive or offer. An example would be 20% off with this flyer, a free group session with this flyer. You do need to have contact information on there, and also you should highlight your unique selling point that makes you stand out from the competition. Do remember to attach a copy of this flyer in your email when you submit the LAP. If you are able to copy the document into the LAP, that's absolutely fine as well, but do make sure it is attached. 6 marks available for this question. You do need 4 marks in order to meet the minimum requirements. If you include all 6 of those bullet points, you will get the 6 marks that you need. So that's the end of question 5 and 6, the promotional plan and promotional flyer. Before we move on to the next question, again, if you do have any questions for me relating to question 5 and 6, please type them in the question box for me now. Again, if you've got no questions, just let me know so I can move on to the next slides. Excellent, Evie. Glad you're all fine. Everybody else, just let me know if you do have any questions at all. If you don't, that's not a problem. Just let me know so I can move on. Thanks, Lauren, that's excellent. Okay, everyone, so let's move on then. I'm going to move on to question 7. So question 7 is starting to look at sales. Sorry, just one quick question coming there about the flyer. The flyer, try and avoid too much text on the flyer. So some headline, some incentive, and your contact details really are all that are required on there. So try to avoid blocks of text or too much writing. Okay, so moving on to question 7, sales forecasting and setting sales targets. Most of the information for these questions is in the second manual that you were given, the sales manual. So again, if you haven't had a chance to review that yet, I suggest you have a look through before starting this section. For the first question, you need to explain the processes that you will use for forecasting and setting sales targets. So for this question, you need to think about your long-term financial goal. This does tie into a later question. You need to think about whether you want to set your targets on a weekly, monthly, or annual basis. The likelihood is you will use all three. Starting with your annual target, you'll break that down into monthly targets. You do need to think about seasonal fluctuations. Based on your research, are there times of the year that you would expect to be busier and quieter? Personal trainers are usually busy in January and February, and business may be quieter over the summer months while more people are away on holiday and just before the Christmas break. The second question here, identify 5 factors that may influence the setting of PT sales targets. For this question, you are required to just list 5 factors that you think could positively or negatively affect these targets. There will be more than 5 factors that will influence your targets. Maybe pick the 5 that are most relevant to your business. An example could be competition in the local area. Another broader category could be the current financial climate, the economy. There are many things that you could use. You just need to list them for the 5 marks. The last question on this page wants you to think of 2 examples of issues which might cause some variance in your sales performance, so basically not hitting your target. And if that happens, what would you do? So an example may be you haven't had any new leads this month because you haven't gone out to generate new business. You haven't put your marketing plan into action. So it may be that you need to go away on a marketing course or get some advice from a professional to help you market your business. You just need to give 2 examples there, 4 marks available, 3 are required to pass this question. Moving on to question 8, the sales cycle. So the first question here wants you to describe how you will qualify your sales leads. So for this question, it really wants you to explore the BANT approach. If you haven't come across the BANT approach before, again, please do refer to your manual where it does explain this approach and also what qualifying your sales leads means. Ultimately, it's determining whether the person in front of you will potentially buy your service or not. 2 marks available for this question. If you can explain the BANT approach and how you would use it, you'll get the marks that you need. The second part of this question wants you to think about things that might influence the buying behaviour of your customers in relation to the products and services that you are offering. With this question, please don't think about your sales pitch or powers of persuasion. Think about the intrinsic and extrinsic factors that may motivate this individual. There are 2 marks available. I suggest for 1 mark you discuss the external motivators, so perhaps friends, family, economy. Internal, you may want to think about motivation, previous experiences, for example. 2 marks available for this question, 1 required for the minimum. For the second half of question 8, You're required to think about your unique selling point. So these are the things that set you apart from your competitors, the things that make you different to everybody else that you're currently studying to be a personal trainer with, and when you go into the personal training world, that make you better than your competitors. Some examples are given on the slide in front of you. When you've highlighted your USPs, you need to think about ways that you may be able to give discounts or special offers. Examples could be block bookings. It could be offering 2-for-1 sessions at quiet times, or it could be offering group training to spread the cost. The third part of this question requires you to explain why it's important to promote your USPs and discounts and special offers. So think about existing and new customers and why they need to be informed about these products. 3 marks available, 2 are required for this question. The last part of this question requires you to explain how you would identify if there are opportunities to upsell to the customer. So for this question, we don't need to explain what you could upsell, but how you would identify if the customer may be willing to buy additional products or services from you. So think about indicators that the buyer may give you. This could be verbal, it could be things that they say. Maybe they give you information about things they want to achieve. We could also think about their body language. So is their body language positive? Are they showing that they are receptive to additional ideas? For the second half of this question, think about how you would take advantage of those upsell opportunities in a professional manner. 2 marks available for this question, 1 required to meet the minimum. So that takes us to the end of question 8. We will be moving on to the cash flow forecast as the next question, which is quite a lengthy question. So before we do, I just want to give you the opportunity to ask me any questions that you do have on questions 7 or 8 of the assignment. Again, if there are no questions, please just comment in the box to let me know. If you do have questions, just type them in there and I will answer them. Lovely stuff. So I think some of us are fine. Let me just wait for a few more responses to come in. Excellent. So no questions coming in so far. So again, if you do have anything that crops up, feel free to ask me at the end, or alternatively keep typing and I will come back to it in a moment. Okay, so we are going to move on to the cash flow forecast question. This is quite a lengthy question and there will be quite detailed explanations. So again, if you don't already have your LAP in front of you, you may wish to open that now, but certainly I would suggest to take notes if not on this section. So these slides in front of you are on the, or do come from the guide, so you do have access to these. You do also have examples of how to complete a cash flow forecast within your manual to refer back to if you need to. So to help you with this guide, we've broken this question down into 3 sections: income, expenditure, and then cash balances. And to give you an idea of where your assessor will assign the marks, generally 4 will come from this income section. So the first thing that you need to do is list 2 products or services. Now, you did list these in an earlier question, so you should already have an idea of what these services are. So this example in front of you, there's one-to-one personal training and group sessions. The first thing that's important is in the startup period, no income will be made from these sessions because at the moment the business hasn't started trading. So in the startup period, you can all enter 0 and 0 for those services, just like the example in front of you. For the remainder of the 12 months of your cash flow forecast, you need to consider spreading your cost per month across to meet your annual target. So if you have targeted to reach £10,000, we would hope to see that your cash flow forecast gives you that £10,000 at the end of the year. But you do need to take into account business growth and seasonal fluctuations. So in this example, you can see how month on month, for the first few months, income steadily increases. There is then a slight drop over the summer months. This is usually when people either take holidays or you, as a business owner, may wish to go away and therefore won't be earning any income during this time. You can see January is the most profitable month. That's a year after starting trading, and also it's the busiest time in the fitness industry. Finally, for this, you need to make sure you include a startup loan. So in the question brief at the beginning, it does say, imagine you have taken a £1,000 startup loan. This goes under the startup period, just as the example shows in front of you. For the remainder of the 12 months on the cash flow forecast, you do need to enter 0, as you won't be earning any more money on the loan during those months. The final mark here comes for correctly adding up the costs as shown. So you do need to make sure the subtotals are correct along the row at the bottom and also the final column. When you've done your income, you need to move on to your expenditure. Now for this question, you need to look at this table in two parts. If first of all we take everything from startup expenditure down to subtotal, the final 3 rows, think of those as separate. So we're just going to look at this first expenditure list. Now 6 marks come from this first expenditure list, so it's a fairly large section. The first thing that we need to put on there is the expenditure from your startup expenditure question. So right at the start, where you decided the things that you would need to buy pre-beginning trading. These go in that first box, so in this case it was £894. Now what we don't need to do is itemise all of these items again on here individually. We just group them under that heading of startup expenditure. For the rest of the 12 months along the same column, it will be 0 because that was just our startup costs. The second thing we need to put on here are loan repayment. So we've taken a £1,000 startup loan. We need to repay that over the following year. There are lots of different ways to do this. One is shown in the example. £83 per month, apart from the final month of the year where £87 has been paid, to make £1,000 for the year. Now you can copy those figures exactly onto your plan if that's what you wish to do. The next thing to include on here are the costs from your promotional plan. So question 5, we had to do a 12-month marketing or promotional plan. Each cost should then be added under the correct month headings on here. So if you were to go back and look in this example, you would find in February this person spent £100 on their promotional activities. Next, you need to include some ongoing running cost for your business. The example given here is for petrol or travel. Other examples could include business rates, but also could include rent if you are renting gym floor space. So do think about what the business may need. If you have said as part of your plan you will be travelling to other people, then you do need to account for those travel costs. If you've said you will be renting a gym, you need to account for those costs in this column. Of course, you can add more rows if there are more items that you want to add onto your cash flow forecast. These would be the minimum. The final thing to add as an item is equipment or uniform. So throughout the year you will need to buy new uniform or equipment. It's up to you how you want to do this or show this. This example, they've spread the repayments of £150 throughout the year. As long as the costings are realistic, you don't need to itemise exactly what you want to buy. So finally, for this expenditure, you need to subtotal your columns. So startup period, we had £894. We haven't got any other any other expenditures. Therefore, we have a total expenditure of £894 in that startup period. We then move on to do the same thing for February. So we add together the loan repayment, the promotional plan cost and the petrol and travel cost to give us our expenditure for February. We do the same for every month of the year, and also make sure you do add up the row totals at the end as well, just like the example in front of you. So finally then, let's take these bottom 3 boxes. So income less expenditure. For this, you do need to go back to your previous income. So let me just go back a slide to show you. In the startup period here, we earned £1,000. So all we do is take 1,000, which was our loan. We spent £894, so we take that away from our 1,000, which gives us our total of £106. Think of that as cash left in the bank. Now, the first thing we do is go through and do that for each of those months of the year. So again, if we go backwards, we earned £220 in February. We spent £208 in February. So we had a profit of £12. And you can see the same format for the rest of the months of the year. So when you've worked out your income minus expenditure, we can move on to look at the cash balances. The cash balance, think of it as money in the bank at the end of the month. So assuming you were in a profit in your startup period, which hopefully you will be, these numbers will be a positive. It could be, though, that if you spent more money than you injected into the business, you could be running at a loss. So make sure if you are at a minus, you do factor those numbers in. An example would be a business using their overdraft to start running the company. So, under income minus expenditure, we had £106 left at the end of our startup period. Underneath, we have cash balance brought forwards. Now, cash balance brought forwards is the amount of money left in the bank at the end of the previous month. Now, because the startup period is the start of our trading, we had no money in the bank prior to this point. So the cash balance brought forwards will always be zero in that startup period. So that makes the running total of cash balance really easy for the first column. We didn't have any money to bring forwards. We've got £106 in the bank, so that's the total. That is our running total of cash balance. If we move on to February, so the first month of trading, we were £12 in profit at the end of this month. What we do is add that £12 to the 106 that we had in the bank from the previous month to give us 118. Now, you might have noticed looking at the page in front of you, there is a system here. So the £106 from the startup period, you'll see that that number moves diagonally across and up one into the cash balance brought forward box. And you should be able to follow the same pattern along. So once you have your running total of cash balance for 1 month, all we need to do is pull that across and diagonally up to the following month. All we're doing month on month is basically taking our profit and adding it to the profit of the month before. That's how we calculate a cash balance. Now, your manual does explain how to calculate a cash balance and this cash flow forecast. So if you are stuck, perhaps refer to the manual for some guidance, but also this example should explain all of the key information. The final point to check your additions here, if you have a look at the final box in the bottom right hand corner, nothing needs to be entered in there. You can enter an NA. If you look just to the left hand side of that, you'll see the figure of 4996. That's basically the total that we have arrived at. Now, to check that our maths is correct, if you look at the two boxes above the NA, you should see that they are the same figure. Now, if our additions are correct, we should see that those three boxes all match. If they don't, that does mean that you've made some error with the addition somewhere along the line. Now, I appreciate there's quite a lot to this question. There's some maths, there's lots of numbers, but I'm hoping the example has helped you. However, if you do have any questions, I would like to try and answer those for you now. So if you could use the question box to ask me any questions that you do have, I will answer them. If you've got longer questions or specific questions relating to your business, you may want to wait until the end where I can answer those in a little bit more detail. Don't forget, you can always ask your course tutor to help you with your cash balances or cash flow forecast if necessary. Good, it looks like some of you are okay. You've got no questions there. I'm just going to give a few moments if anybody is typing for those questions to come in. So if you haven't got any questions, just let me know that you are fine. And then we'll move on to question 10. So we're almost at the end of this assignment. Excellent, glad to see that some of you are fine with that. Okay, fabulous, everybody. So again, if you do have any questions, please feel free to keep typing them. I'll answer them at the end. If you do want to stay on at the end of the webinar, that's absolutely not a problem. Okay, let's move on to question 10 then. So let's move on to your business objectives. So for this question, you basically need to write 2 SMART goals for year 1, year 2, and year 3. Now, one SMART goal does need to be a financial goal, and one SMART goal needs to be a development goal, so independent of any numbers or figures. Some examples are given in front of you. So, for example, to achieve a profit of £25,000 at the end of year 1 would be a good SMART goal. A development goal could be to increase Instagram followers to over 500 at the end of year 1. Another example could be to complete a qualification in Pilates by the end of the first year. Consider the things that are really important to your business. If you want to have a website up and running, I would suggest it's important to do that early on rather than wait until year 3. You do need 2 marks for each year in order to meet the minimum for this question. So please make sure those goals are SMART and you have 1 financial and 1 development goal. Again, refer to the example if you're unsure. You will be writing SMART goals throughout the rest of your course, so you can always chat to your course tutor if you do need some additional help with writing SMART goals for your business. The final question then in this assignment is still relating to sales and goals. This time it's looking at a 4-year forecast. Now this is a forecast, so these figures are not always going to be accurate 4 years down the line. What this question wants you to do is basically consider what your running costs may be in 4 years' time. They want you to consider how much you may charge per hour and therefore where you may expect to be profit-wise at the end of year 4, by which point the business should be trading successfully. So there's an example here in front of you. First thing you need to do is break down your annual costs. So in this example, this person has listed reps registration, insurance, uniform and gym rent. There are other things they could list here, for example, promotion. So I may expect to see more marketing costs, especially in a year 4 of the business. So they've established that their break-even revenue is £20,250. That's the amount that they think they will spend in year 4. Therefore, that's what they need to earn to break even. Now, if your business is running on a smaller scale than this, those costs may be much less, but do try to make sure they are realistic. Next, you need to work out what your average training fee is per hour. Now, again, all of this is explained in the manual if you do need to come back and have a look. So the example here is £37.50. So this person has worked out on average, that's what they will earn per hour. They've also indicated that they intend to work 40 hours per week. So assuming those 40 hours are at the average fee of £37.50 per hour, we multiply them together, which gives a weekly revenue forecast. So this person is likely to earn on average £1,500 per week. Now, of course, some weeks may be more, some weeks may be less. What we need to do next is work out how many weeks per year this person or you are likely to work. So in this example, 45 weeks has been given, which is 7 weeks holiday, which is about standard. You may wish to take more or less holiday, but make sure you do factor in time off for yourself as well. So in this example, the weekly revenue of £1,500 has been multiplied by the number of weeks per year this person intends to work to give us the figure of £67,500. This is our annual revenue forecast. That's the amount of money that we will make per year before we take off expenditure. So for the next part of the question, we need to work out the profit. So the profit is simply taking this figure and minusing away our annual costs. That will give us our total profit for the year. So in this example, that comes out at £47,250. Now, to work out a profit margin is ultimately how much of the money you earn is pure profit. If a business is running at a profit margin of more than 20–25%, it's doing okay. Obviously, the higher up we are, the better the business is doing. So what we do with this is, first of all, take our profit and then we divide it by our total revenue coming in. Multiply that number by 100 and it gives us a percentage. In this case, 62.2. So this business is running at a profit margin of 62.2%, which is very healthy. Again, if these numbers, or if I'm going a little bit too quick for you, you do have all of this information in the manual to come back to if you do need to refer back to it at a later date. Obviously, I'll answer any questions that you've got in just a moment too. There are only 2 marks available for this question, so I appreciate there's a lot of working out to get the minimum marks. But if you work through it step by step, use the bullet points to help you, you should achieve the marks that you need for this question. So that takes us up to question 11, which is the end of the assignment. The worksheet is still to come, but we are only going to go through 2 of the questions on that worksheet. Right, everybody, let me move on then to the worksheet. So just 2 questions to go through with you here. So once you finish the assignment, do keep scrolling past the mark scheme and you will find the worksheet at the end, so please don't miss that. There are 58 marks available for the worksheet. You do need 43 as a minimum in order to achieve the pass mark, but you do need to make sure that you meet the minimum marks per question also. Those are indicated at the end of each question. I'm just going to run through 2 questions with you. On the guide, again available to download here or on your online learning platform, there is information about each of the questions, but I'm just going to run through the 2 which tend to have the most issues associated with them. The first one is question number 1, which is list and describe the 9 stages of the sales cycle in relation to your business. Now, page 5 in your sales manual contains the 9 stages of the sales cycle. So the first thing that you need to do is list and then explain each of those 9 stages. Please make sure you do explain or describe. If you just list, you won't achieve the minimum marks for this question. When you've done that, you need to link this to your chosen business or throughout link it to your chosen business to get the additional mark there. So you do need 8 marks as a minimum. 10 are available for this question. So that was page 5 in your sales manual for those 9 stages. The final question to run through with you is question 9. This is quite a large question, so it's one of the reasons that marks are dropped here sometimes. Now, on the guide, it gives you some information, but the example on the slide in front of you isn't contained within the guide because this does give you a very clear idea of how to answer this question. This question requires you to look at inbound telephone calls, outbound telephone calls, and also face-to-face selling. For each one, you need to explain the characteristics, the advantages, disadvantages, how to manage customer behaviour, how to interpret the customer's reaction, and how to involve the customer during closing the sales. Now, all of this information is contained within your manual, but it isn't in a table format. So what you will need to do is work through a few pages to pull out all of the relevant information. One important thing with this question is please don't duplicate your answers. So don't copy the same answer into several boxes because you will only get the 1 mark, and you do need 15 out of 18 to pass this question. So if you take the example for face-to-face, characteristics, so approaching client on the gym floor, delivering education seminars, for example, talking to someone in person. Advantages, it's easier to build rapport and establish a relationship. Questions can be answered there and then. A disadvantage could be that there's a high demand on your time as a personal trainer, and a client may get frustrated if you can't answer their questions there and then. In terms of managing customer behaviour, you may need to overcome barriers by highlighting USPs. You may need to adapt your behaviour to show respect and understanding for the client. In terms of interpreting the customer's reaction, you need to make sure that you observe verbal and non-verbal behaviour, so things that they say and the way that they react, to establish likes and dislikes. In terms of closing the sale, you need to give the customer as much information as possible and give them the opportunity to ask questions and obviously answer any questions that they may have. This or similar information needs to be given for inbound and outbound telephone calls. Please make sure you answer every box, and like I've already said, make sure the answers are different for each of those boxes too. 15 marks needed for this question, 18 are available. Now, the remainder of the questions on the worksheets are relatively straightforward, and the majority of the answers will come from reviewing the information online and in your manual. The guide will help you with any additional questions that you are unsure of in those areas. So that's the end of the content that I want to go through with you with this or for this webinar this afternoon. So what I want to do now is to basically open up the floor to any questions that you might have about any aspect of the business and sales LEP. Some of you might have similar questions, some of you might have no questions at all. If I could just ask you all to hold on until those questions have come in, because it may be useful for you to hear the answers to some of those questions as well. So if you do have any questions, please do type them into the comment box for me now. Okay, so a couple of people, just a couple of questions coming in. So Keith, that's great if you use some online software that does that for you already, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, great, really efficient way to do that. For this assignment, you do need to submit it in the format on the LEP. So you can obviously do the sums that you need to on a different package, but can you just make sure that you copy that across onto that document? It just needs to be in that format. But certainly for when you are actually working, that is by far a more efficient way to do things. If you have that software, yeah, certainly. Great. Anybody else got any questions for me? So I'm just going to see if any more questions do come in. But hopefully you found this webinar this afternoon useful. Oh, okay. So actually, Lauren's just asked a question. What software was that? So Keith, you just mentioned there's some online software that you use for your accounting. Would it be possible for you to potentially pop in the question box what that software is, so I can share that with Lauren, who's on the webinar today as well? I'm aware there are lots of different packages out there. Okay, so if anybody is interested, it is called Free Agent. It costs around $17.50 a month, and Keith's recommendation is that it's excellent. So that could be one for you to look into. I'm sure there are other packages out there as well. Excellent stuff. Thank you. A couple of people are saying thanks, Keith. So yeah, lovely stuff. All right, everybody. So hopefully now you do have an understanding, or a better understanding, of how to submit your LAP and when that does need to be submitted. And hopefully that's helped to answer any queries that you may have had about the assignment and also about the worksheet as well. I will